Live. Going live. Going live to YouTube. And I'm going to call Craig in. Longtime friend.
Now recording.
Longtime friend of the show, Craig. Now recording. Thank you, Craig. Welcome to the Yanggang Roundtable. This is our 180th episode. I went through and corrected some numbering errors. So this is our 180th episode, I realize now. So that's great. And we have someone who has been here from the very beginning, or was here at the very beginning, and the show has changed a ton, and so it's great to see you back again. Keiko Sono, thank you for coming on. How have you been?
Thank you for having me back. This is kind of amazing. I'm getting a little moved here, because it was exactly like a year ago that you guys restarted it.
Yeah, it was very different.
I got out, only just like a month in, but it was great, when you guys were starting out. And kudos to all of you, Faye, Shell, and now, Kai and everybody else for really keeping this going for a long time. I know it's not easy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes
it's true.
sometimes it's not easy.
It makes your life easy.
Yeah. It's been great, though.
When you're here, it feels very easy.
You did make it easy at the beginning. Yeah, got us on Anchor, which got us on Spotify and other platforms.
Right, yeah.
And now we have this wonderful archive of the most complete archive is on Spotify and Anchor of all of our episodes. Some episodes didn't survive, like Twitch ate them or YouTube ate them, or some sort of archiving error exists where the only complete catalog is on Spotify, because some episodes were never video to begin with, the very earliest ones. And Spotify is also the most time efficient way to consume the episodes, because all the silence is compressed and taken out. They just take about 15-20% less time to listen to. Maybe less, maybe 10 to 15% less time, but still that's significant when they're like 2 hour episodes.
Let's introduce Keiko and who she is now. Because her connection to our
yes, of
podcast
course,
is cool,
I've been blathering on.
Only
Please,
because Keiko is an amazing person in her own right.
Yes, please.
Everybody
please.
Show her own right.
Keiko, the most recent thing that I know about that you've been doing is the UBI. You've been connected to a UBI pilot type of thing that's happening in the what is it called? The Hudson Valley?
Yeah.
Is that in New York State?
Yeah, it's an area. This is specifically mid-Hudson area. So Hudson River runs north-south from way above Albany down to Manhattan, and we're like midway through there. And it has cities like Kingston, Hudson, Saugerties, New Paltz. It's a pretty wide area.
New Paltz, huh? That just came up in a Twitter thing earlier today. Okay. So you have so you have a connection to this space because do you live there? Okay.
Oh, you mean the Hudson Valley? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you live in the Hudson Valley? Okay.
Yeah.
We both do, actually.
I've been here. That's
Oh,
right.
you live there too?
Yes, I do. Not in the mid-Hudson Valley, though, in the southern.
Yeah, but it's still Hudson Valley.
It is. We're neighbors.
Yeah.
It's extra great to have you on the show.
So how many counties or whatever does that area cover?
Well, it's got Ulster, Dutchess. I guess that's also part of the Hudson Valley, and probably Columbia, Capital Region, Orange, right? And you're in Rockland?
Yes, Rockland. Wait, no, Rockland is its own county. Rockland. Well, no, wait, Rockland isn't. Yes, of course. I mean, I'm not talking about counties. Rockland is in the Hudson Valley, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
I am not great at local geography, though.
Yeah. So yeah, it covers a pretty wide area.
Yeah.
A lot of different cultures. Yeah.
How did you get involved in this?
I'm actually not. So this is the interesting thing. So there are 2 pilots going on, one in Ulster County and one in the city of Hudson. The one in Hudson started last October, and Ulster County, I think they're just going to start distributing the payments, the basic income next month. So when I first heard about the Ulster County pilot about 2 months ago, I was just ecstatic because I've been pushing UBI in this area for a long time, and it's been really my dream to connect my local community with my Twitter community of UBI and yanggang, because there was quite a big gap between those two worlds in my life, and it was kind of hard because Yang and UBI advocates on Twitter, we're all so excited. And on Twitter, it really looks like, well, of course, everybody should support UBI. And, you feel really hopeful about, the state of UBI. But then you get on the ground level and, you start talking to people and it's like, it's not really on that many people's radar. And of course, it's
They don't
much
even
more.
know what those letters stand for
No,
when you
no.
talk to people. Yes.
Yeah. And of course Andrew Yang changed it a little bit, even during his presidential campaign, it was so hard for me to, like really get anyone to really seriously think about it. Most people said, well, that's just a fantasy. Why waste energy talking about fantasy? That's not going to happen. That's just one of the common answers that I got. But Ulster County changed all of that. I mean, the pilot changed all of that. All of a sudden, people were talking about it, and I got contacted by two local reporters for pretty long stories. And I thought, this would be a really great opportunity to do community engagement so that you can seize this momentum to really spread accurate information and really engage people. So I contacted the county executive's office, and I have a lot of local connections with local politicians because they're like, a lot of them are my friends, and those friends know that I've been doing this kind of community engagement work from my previous work as a public artist, community artist. So it was kind of a natural fit, and the executive loved the idea, and we were in the same meeting, and he was like, yeah, I really want to get a lot of people involved. But even UBI pilots is no joke. It's a really huge operation, and it's now we have more than 40 municipalities committed to this, but the actual research is done by just a few labs, and Ulster County one is being conducted by University of Pennsylvania Basic Income Lab, which also did Stockton pilot. So these people, the research lab really doesn't want anybody touching these pilots. I asked, I emailed the director, Amy Castor Baker. We were introduced by a mutual friend, so I didn't cold send email. I didn't send a cold email. And I said, I really don't want to come in between your pilots and the people, but this is such a great opportunity. So is there any way that we can come up with a way that we can incorporate public community engagement with this pilot? I don't have to come in contact with the recipients. I respect the privacy, but is there any way that we can even think about this? But I didn't hear back from her directly, and the executive's office told me indirectly that they really didn't want that to happen. So, okay, I understand that, that's fine.
So under what capacity did you want to contact them or learn about all of this?
Well, of course, originally I did want to interview some of the recipients in Ulster County because I really do consider this place as really like my community because I've been doing a lot of projects here. I did a story archive. I did oral history of residents of the New York City watershed, which is up here, 2 hours north of the city. A lot of people in New York City don't know that their whole, water comes all the way from up here. I mean, those are the stories that I think are worth spreading. So I wanted to incorporate those kind of stories into this big tent of UBI. I just thought that it was a really good unifying platform to just approach people of all different political spectrum. We have a lot of conservatives, we have a lot of Republicans. I would just reach out to them and say, hey, you heard about this pilot going on, right? What do you think? And then I would say, well, how do you think your group, like if I were talking to like sportsmen's club, those sportsmen's club people up here, they have a very tight community mind. They do everything for their own community members, and they take care of their land. Like it's they understand community. So I would say, hey, how do you think UBI would impact your members? How do you think if we all receive this kind of money, what can you do as the club, as a community member? So I think it's a really great opportunity to engage people of all different opinions on this kind of positive framework, right? So stop thinking about UBI as this individual thing. Like think about what it can do for your own community. Anyway, so that was the angle that I approached the executive's office, and I helped with their public information session and with the panel discussion. I think they all went well, but in the end, they told me that they couldn't. So what I asked them is that I knew that they couldn't really do anything with their budget. They didn't want they couldn't have the taxpayers' money coming into anything like this. So I knew that, but I said, if you can give me some kind of an official title, like a relationship or partnership, this, because I have an organization, right? So it's called Forge Collective. So Forge Collective, in partnership with the Osceola County, will design this community engagement program, and I would do fundraising on my own. But even then, they said that the county legislators, they don't want their office to have anything to do any more to do with UBI, because the legislators themselves are probably not for UBI, because they're pretty. I mean, a lot of them are conservative. So
Can you,
anyway,
can you tell us a little bit about Forge Collective? So you say this is the organization from which you reached out to these other UBI pilots as a volunteer, sort of, right? You became, like, you presented yourself as,
yeah,
I'd like to volunteer and help
yeah,
promote this, but
yeah.
you have an organization of your own that's called Forge Collective. Tell us a little bit about what that is, because I see that
Sure.
your website is
Yeah, yeah,
forgeartcollective.org.
right. Yeah, because Force Collective was already taken. So my background is in art. I have a master's degree in painting, but for about 10 years, I've been doing more of like community building art project. Like for example, I got a grant from New York City Department of Environmental Protection to do an outreach project in the watersheds up here in the Catskills. This is where the water goes to New York City, and the this department has to deal a lot with the local residents, because they do like stream repairs and that kind of stuff, and they have to work with the landowners. So maintaining a delicate relationship is an important thing. So I got two grants to do some, extensive community outreach. So I did oral history, and I created a story archive, and I also hired 3 artists to do like kind of an interactive community art kind of project. So my idea was that Force Collective would activate the potential of local artists whose means of making any kind of money or having any kind of status is so limited. Like if you're a visual artist, if you're like painter, the only model that is available to you is to create your projects, but only sell them through like gallery systems that are really, really limited, and the price point is like fixed. It is like hitched to like the higher end of this market. So, just, it doesn't sell to most middle class or low income people.
Yeah.
So, I wanted artists to be more involved with kind of like community building projects. I really see the potential of creative people to like really not just make art about issues, but they wanted me to they wanted them to I wanted them to be more proactive in actual projects that would really make a difference. Like, I see a lot more potentials in artists really taking more lead in like political campaigns. I mean, you saw among Yang Gang, we have a lot of creators and a lot of people just did things on their own, like, you did with this podcast.
Who put that rap track out recently? Thank you for saying that about me. Who put that rap? Who is that?
Are
I
you
can't think
talking
of his
about
name.
MC Jin?
Probably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The one about Yanggang?
Well, no,
Yanggang.
Well, I mean, there was the Yanggang 2020 one, but that was a more recent one too. Yeah, is it MC Jin? Yeah, I think it's
MC
MC
Jin.
Jin. I
Yeah,
forgot
it
his
was.
name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the most.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
exactly.
one's
That was great.
amazing.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it.
Hey, Ariel's here. Hi, Ariel.
Hi, you
Hey,
guys.
Ariel.
Hi. I
Hey,
got
man.
some
Yeah.
great news. I passed my
Oh,
Part 107 exam 2 days ago.
Congrats.
So
oh
I
yeah.
can, yeah,
Congrats.
I can
As a
finally
drone
fly the drone.
operator, correct?
Yeah, so I can
That's
finally
great.
fly it for money commercially.
There's going to be a big market for that. You're
Commercially?
going to be able
What?
to deliver
Yeah.
packages with that for one, and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
That's not until years from now, but like I don't like there's gonna be a law in 2023 which says that every drone needs like a remote ID, so like they can see everything, like how high you're flying, how fast you're flying, how far you are, where you launched from, and stuff like that. But I don't know. I guess they did it for planes and helicopters, so now they're doing that. But until 2023, it's pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's super exciting. We are talking with Keiko, who is an artist herself, and I'll bet she could
Very
think of a
nice.
lot of really, really interesting things that a drone would be able to do for
Yeah.
her collaborative
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, it's fine. It relates to UBI because, like, first you need, like, drones are very expensive, and if it wasn't for my unemployment money, I probably wouldn't be able to afford it. And not only that, but like the ground school and the tests that you have to take, I mean, those also cost money. So
Yeah.
it's like you're not getting this money because you want to sit down and like eat Cheetos and watch reruns of Jerry Springer. You want to invest in yourself, but those barriers to entry is like the cash. So yeah.
Well, good thing one hurdle leaped.
Yeah.
So the person that invited Keiko here today was actually Kai. So Kai, do you want to kind of take
Very
over
nice.
sort of the chat and continue with what's happening? Yeah.
No, I don't.
Not really. You're like, I'm happy to just let it go.
I mean,
Well,
so Keiko and I are connected through a women's for Yang kind of it's just a chat group, and people have come and gone from it, and it's just our space to support each other, and when we are all going through stuff. The pandemic has been a life-changing event for almost everybody. Like almost everybody's lives have changed significantly as a result. And even before that, this was a space that was very supportive about all of us being who we are versus kind of this judgmental idea of what a woman's supposed to be. So there's lots of us in that group that stay home and take care of our kids. That's what we do. That is our job. That is our work, right? Why do we need to put that in quotes? Because it's work. Faye does it. I do it when my kids are with me. Some of others of us here in this group, in the podcast group, have caregiving with children and sometimes our parents, sometimes our spouses. So, this is one of the reasons I got brought in to UBI as a concept many, many years ago, because my background, I have a master's in social work. So, one of the first things you talk about macro social work is, hey, universal benefits are the most cost effective, they're the most fair, they reach everybody because that's what universal means. And this is what we need to think about when we start talking about welfare. We need to think in terms of what programs do we have that are super effective, have low administrative costs, and reach the most number of needy people, right? And it's always the universal ones. And in the United States, there are two simple ones: Medicare, Social Security. Those are universal benefits for anybody who lives in the United States who's able to obtain a Social Security number. You pay into those systems. And your payments that come out of your paycheck aren't like set aside in a savings account for you later. Those are your premiums that pay for everybody else that's on it right now today, right? And there's a protected fund for both of those that cannot go bankrupt, like ideally. I don't know. I haven't followed. I don't know if that's changed. I still think it's the case that those are still protected funds to ensure that even if we experience a period like this where people aren't getting those funds taken out of their paychecks to fund the current program, that people who are in the current program can be provided for. They must fund themselves, and that's why those funds are protected. So, that's what I learned. That was 2001. That I'm having that discussion of the best programs, the best welfare programs are universal. They reach everybody, whether you need it or not. And this is the nice thing, and we've found this out in the pandemic. Many charitable organizations, many non-for-profits have discovered that the screening tools that we use, if people are pulling through the food pantry, it's a waste of our time. If they are showing up, they need the food. Don't ask how much they want. Ask how many people they're trying to provide for. How many households are they trying to get food to? Because you may not be able to do the qualifying paperwork if the person who needs the food is actually somebody who's housebound and has one or two people that they can even call to say, I need food, can you go get me food? I don't care if it's free food, but I need it. I'm desperate, I'm hungry, I can't get out. And I know that because I lived that experience during the pandemic after I got injured, that I couldn't go to the grocery store. I couldn't walk. I didn't have a car. Like I didn't have a system set up for me to be disabled in that capacity. It takes months for the systems to work. But if it were just universal, if I could just call the bus company and say, oh, I've had a change in circumstance. Now I need curbside. I'm in a wheelchair. Right? And then the bus company would just make that change.
Right.
And if you abuse the system, then you get a ding excluding you from certain services because you've been found to abuse them. That's far more effective. You need fewer numbers of people to follow on those kind of like fraud reports, right? And actually, it frees people up to do fraud investigations. Fraud's a huge issue, but it becomes less of an issue if you're doing universal systems. Because where's the fraud if it's universal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It's just that like universal is the most fair, so nobody gets excluded.
Well, yeah. But and the conservative talking point, this, Ariel, because you've come from similar background, a more conservative background like I have. The talking point is, why should I pay for somebody who's doing nothing? Why should I pay for somebody to sit at home and eat Cheetos and watch TV?
There are good reasons. We got enough Cheetos. We got enough TV. Somebody's got to watch it. Somebody's got to eat them. The ad buyers at Jerry Springer, thank you for your attention. And the Frito-Lays, thank you for your patronage. What's the problem? The market goes.
Well, it is what like you and I understand, but that actually does provide for the economy. That's part of our economy.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's like, but people who are going to abuse the system are going to figure out a way to abuse the system no matter what system you set up. Do you want the right people or the wrong people abusing the system?
Right.
Because poor people abusing the system basically costs you nothing. And what it does do is it keeps them out of the prison.
But what does it even mean?
And then that starts getting into dicey political stuff. Because then you have to...
What constitutes abuse even, right? Like, who doesn't deserve the right to live? That's nonsense. There's no way to abuse a system that only affords you the right to live, I think.
Well, and I think for
it's a
most
hard privilege
people,
to abuse. It's like the floor of society.
Well, I think the problem is that accusation that poor people are abusing the system, or that people, maybe not even poor people, maybe wealthy people are abusing the system, overlooks the fact that the people who are making that accusation are the people most guilty of abusing the system. They're the people who have the most to lose for people gaining true freedom.
Complete projection.
Those are the people making so the finger that's pointing at us, hey, you poor people, you're trying to rip us off, right? With whatever. Student loan, you go down the list. Is it student loans? Is it medical care? Is it a basic income? Is it food? Is it housing? Is it clean water? Like, go down the list, because those are all things that we must have to live. And, right?
Well, maybe not student loans, but yeah.
Education, learning.
Right.
Yeah, we should maybe just pay for public education instead of making everything into a loan.
Maybe we don't need giant institutions to be the only or best way to educate ourselves. I don't know.
I'm with you.
I think perhaps the answer becomes doing what we're doing now, what Keiko's doing and her community is participating in the community.
What community?
It's like saying, okay, you know what? The government's so ineffective. We're going to find ways to survive without depending on an institution and a building. And instead, we're investing first in ourselves and saying, I'm going to reclaim this word entitlement and say, I'm entitled because I'm an entity. Right?
Yeah.
I live.
Well, you're a human being. You're a human being in our society.
Right. Like that's like the root of the word entitlement does come from you have an entity.
Yeah.
That needs something. It's connected.
And it's amazingly stupid to me how how much time is invested in you when you're young through like education and school lunches and all of this stuff, and it's like you morons are just willing to let that investment go to waste.
Yeah.
Like you know, it's ridiculous. Like nobody says like, oh, he's 5 years old or 7, they should be like working. You have to invest in people first, and then you get the returns later. You don't like if people have nothing, they have they have nothing to like contribute to. But everyone deserves some kind of starting momentum to start their lives. So when you deny people that, it's like, why the fuck would you do that, idiot? Like, yeah.
And I mean, you study U.S. history, you figure out really quick that a lot of it, most of it, almost all of it is about property and who gets control of the property. And so ultimately, like what we've seen happen since World War II is that they've taken the commons away.
And they've turned it into a parking lot.
And this is where I see the work that Keiko is doing as being the response to that.
Yeah.
Go.
I think you brought up a lot of really important points, and especially about the commons. I do think that they are slightly separate issues. So I think we need to look at them as kind of a separate thing. Like UBI on its own really does not touch upon the inequity of wealth, property. It creates an income floor, but that would not really change the wealth. So unless we really tackle that part too, because it's the wealth that creates more wealth, we can have people have at least basic income so that you will not starve, but that on its own will not change the system itself. So that's the challenge. I think what you're addressing right here definitely could be helped by implementation of UBI, but that that bigger systematic transformation will not automatically happen because of UBI. I think we need some kind of a stewardship, and I think what you're doing here, talking in a group like this, is part of the stewardship. I think, right? I would love to see more of that, and that's why, yes, you're right, Kai. That's why I'm talking about community engagement, because we can just focus on, I don't know, like legislations, or we can just focus on people who already support UBI. But unless we reach across that boundary into the group of people who might not oppose UBI, but like UBI is not really on the top of their list, there's a huge number of people, and those are the people who are politically engaged. And a lot of people, like in Hudson Valley, it's a pretty progressive area in cities. Once you go into the rural area, it's all conservative. But even like the liberals and progressives, most people don't really see UBI as the top issue. They think they have Medicare for all, education, civil rights, all, police, all kinds of things. And UBI is just really not on top of the list among those who really can make a difference on the community level. That's where I'm like really trying to
Well, and I
make
think that
waves.
part of the challenge is trying to help people understand that a UBI is one of the best solutions
Yes.
to help address all of those things,
Yeah.
because poverty fuels every single one of those issues.
Right.
And if you don't have people starting out at zero, if you have
Right.
people starting out with some kind of a floor,
Yeah,
that's only going to create good.
and here's the funny thing, like I was just listening, our friend Nolan Nieves put a thing about Glenn Beck. I don't know if you all know who he is. He was like complaining about people who are these jobs can't afford to pay people. These jobs aren't getting people because unemployment is paying them more. But then he says all of this is leading to a UBI. UBI. Well, dummy, wouldn't you want a UBI? A UBI means that they'll get more in addition to the money they make. Unemployment says if you try to improve yourself and if you try to get a job and that job pays you less, then we're not going to give you this money anymore. So, well, no shit, people are going to do what's in their best interest. Whereas a UBI, as opposed to unemployment, means we'll give you this money no matter what. And that's it. And if you work, you're just going to make more on top of that. So why would you be complaining about unemployment benefit? I mean, why would you be complaining about UBI when it's when it's superior to these unemployment benefits? Like, unbelievable.
And the unemployment system is broken. Like, we've
Yeah.
got effectively 53 different unemployment systems in this nation, because
Right.
every state runs it differently.
Yeah.
They're not
And that's the problem.
interconnected. And for people in situations like the one that I'm in, where I ended up moving 700 miles across 2 state lines, my Missouri unemployment is over. But I'm still trying to fight a battle for unemployment with Missouri that dates back to when I was living there. They don't want to even answer my calls. Well, you don't live here anymore.
Well, they closed
No,
your
I'm
case.
calling
They
about
wanted to close your case.
$12,000.
Right.
A
Yeah.
bureaucrat pushed the button and said, "We're moving her file from here, from the open section to the closed section." And so every time they want to talk about it, they're like, "Well, first we have to go locate it way over there, probably." So it's just, it's the
It's
kind of
absolutely
bureaucracy that nobody
disgusting how
really
much power
understands.
these bureaucrats have. It's absolutely gross. Like if you're a small government conservative, you should be disgusted at the power of bureaucrats. Yeah.
Well, but then, if you have a good bureaucrat, they could
Yeah.
do a lot. They could
Yeah,
do
that's true.
good in the world, but they don't
Yeah,
have a
for
lot of
sure.
power because they can't affect the politics. So it's separated. Even if you have a good person in that seat, they can't do everything because then they can't make the decisions that, created their position.
And I think this is where the community organizing, like what Keiko's doing, right, becomes that essential.
So, as a community organizer who is participating in this Women's for Yang group, is that the same as the Women for Yang on Facebook? Is
No,
that how you
I
guys
don't think
met?
so.
No. Okay, so this is a whole different group. There's a lot of little women's groups that have popped up. I've been on the Facebook group before, and I remember there was also a sorority for Yang. Did you guys
Yeah.
ever participate in that? Okay.
No, I
No,
did not.
that wasn't our group either.
Okay. So yeah, so there's been all these different little Yang groups that pop up, and sounds really interesting that you were able to connect through them. Now, so you took your background in art and in community organizing, and you said, I'm going to move it towards, getting this getting people to understand more about the UBI. So, what I know is that you hosted that informational session for all of us to hear more about what has been happening with the UBI pilot. Do you want to tell us about some of the things that came out of that session?
Sure. So I organized a panel discussion with guests, 5 guests, sorry. One was the Ulster County executive, Pat Ryan, Hudson Mayor Kamal Johnson, and a Spark of Hudson co-founder. So this is the foundation that funded the Hudson pilot. So the co-founder, Susan Danziger, and Hudson Pilot's director, John Hunt. Those were the 4 guests. So we had kind of an informational Zoom event. We started with a video of showing what the UBI is, and I got a lot of positive feedback on that video. For us, UBI advocates, those were all well-known facts, but for a lot of people, that was the first time they really got like a whole kind of comprehensive view of what UBI was. So apparently it was a good idea to start with that video. And then I introduced the panels, and they talked about those 2 pilots. And the significant thing is of course, even though Hudson Valley is a pretty large area, still to have 2 pilots going on in one area is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
In Ulster County being a pretty rural and it's really not a densely populated area, and Hudson is a pretty small town too. So it's both places are pretty unusual among other UBI pilots. And then I shared my idea for community engagement, and then we opened up the discussion, and we talked about imagining our community and our world with UBI. That was a pretty nice little section there too, especially like the executive Pat Ryan. He said something like, he's kind of in the same camp as we are. He sees UBI as a bigger, has a potential not just beyond poverty alleviation and activating abundance. So that was nice, and then we had a pretty long Q&A. And Faye, thank you so much for fielding the questions. You were typing answers in the Q&A. That was great.
We say it all the
well,
time.
Yeah.
I showed up late. I didn't know necessarily everything that had happened, but I did see that there were a lot of questions that were very sort of, general questions. If they weren't pertaining specifically to the project itself, it was just a general question about UBI. And I felt that I felt confident I could at least, send the right articles or something that would support the information for that.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us specifically about the pilot itself? How did it
Sure.
get started? It sounded like Humanity Forward may have had, some contribution to it.
Yeah. So Hudson Pilot, that was done in partnership with Humanity Forward and Spark of Hudson. I think just those 2 organizations. And this is a pretty small pilot with 25 people, but the interesting thing is the duration is 5 years. So 25 people and those are 25 individuals, not households, receiving $500 a month for 5 years. And Hudson is an interesting town. When I first moved here, Hudson was like really, really down and out. It's a beautiful little city right on the side of Hudson, and the whole streets run towards the water, and there's big kind of industrial, old factory sites along the water. But for the last 20 years or so, it got really gentrified. So a lot of wealthy people moved up from the city, but Hudson also has a really large population in poverty. So that gap really widened over the last decade or so. So, it's a good place for pilot for many different reasons. And Ulster County, it's one of the few pilots that are done on a county base, even though, of course, county government really has nothing to do with it. The way it happened was that at the beginning of the pandemic, the county set up like a donation fund to, as a relief for pandemic. So they got a lot of philanthropic money last year. I think they used like United Way or something to raise that money, and they used it for good use. Like they did a lot of meal deliveries and stuff. And this year, they still had a lot of leftovers. So the executive and his assistant thought about how to use that money, and they came up with this idea of pilots. So all of that, their money, in that fund went to people, and they used up all the money, right? And there was no way that they could have used any of the county budget for this purpose. But they still needed money to give to the research lab to do the pilots. So that money came from the community foundation. It's all like a private money. And I'm sure that this is the case. I mean, I maybe I really shouldn't say because I'm not completely sure, but chances are the money that goes to the lab is probably far exceeds the money that will go to the people, because that's the way things always work. Those researches are very expensive. Anyway, so that's how this is happening. So they're giving 100 people $500 a month for 1 year, and they're just starting out next month. Oh, and for 100 spots, they got more than 4,000 applicants. So here's another thing about those pilots. It's so clear that there's a huge need. I mean, otherwise, why would we get 4,000 applicants for 100 positions, right? So I got a lot of people contacted me, said, "Hey, what's going on? Did I get it?" And I just had to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, like more than 4,000 people applied." So it sort of leaves people who didn't get it with a little disappointment and a little bitter feelings. And for them, it's no more than a lottery that they didn't win.
Yeah.
That was another thing I wanted to address through this community engagement program. You don't want any negative feelings, happening because of these pilots, right? So you want to engage them.
Well, that is, I'm having a little trouble hearing Keiko for a minute. So, okay, I just wanted to fill in this moment, a little bit with the fact that the pilots that we hear about are generally not universal, and so it can't be called fully a universal basic income. You could maybe call it a lottery basic income, but in this case, was it really a lottery? Did they also have some means testing involved? Like, then in that case, we would call it maybe a qualified basic income, which is a term that I think is very, very appropriate.
Yeah.
That Shale was saying these would be called qualified basic incomes.
QBS.
So was there sort of a, like you have to be below a certain income or some sort of requirement? Yeah.
Yes. In Ulster County, I think the upper limit was $46,000, and in Hudson, probably lower. I am pretty positive that a majority of these pilots have income cap.
Right. And so when we do these pilots and they call them universal, we're trying to test something, but it's something that can't be tested unless you do every single person. And
That's
so
correct.
the closest that you can get to it, I think, would be a total lottery where even people who were very wealthy could be a part of it, and that it's not required for you to show up and say that you want it, even that you know that random people would be selected in a geographic location. But nobody has really done that. I don't think.
No.
So
Yeah. No, interestingly, I got those questions, when we had that public informational session, people raised questions like, well, why are you calling this UBI? It's neither universal or basic income. So,
right, because $500 would not be a sufficient amount to
no,
cover all of your basics, but it is
yeah.
a supplemental income. So there's another word that is not quite.
Right.
So maybe qualified supplemental income would be more
QC
accurate.
QSI. Right.
QSI. Wow, it's getting
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing about this is that because most of these pilots are means tested, and we're kind of in a catch-22 because that's an easy sell to those mayors, when you're saying that, especially during the pandemic, and this was also the reasoning for Ulster County as well. Here's the money that we have in this fund. How do we use this? Oh, let's just give this to people, but they can't just give it out to everybody. So let's use this, existing channel that's already there. This is a system that we can use, and it's frankly, it makes those mayors look really great, because this is kind of a trendy thing, and I'm glad that they're doing it. It's helping people, and it's still, really, beneficial to the movement. So I'm really thankful that this is happening. But I think it's time to build on top of that. We are already spending so much money on these pilots to get very similar results. Because the only result that these pilots can measure is on the impact on individuals. They can never measure macro impact.
Well, they
Right,
do. They do that. They have done that in various other pilots that we've looked at. For example, they had some trials, I think, in villages in Kenya where they gave
Right.
where they gave out money and they measured what the impact was on the entire village, even though not everybody received it. So they saw how the money would float in the community and continue to have positive effects because the money doesn't immediately leave the village. It gets, used many times over and over. So
Yes.
there's a velocity of money that just keeps it rotating before it gets sucked up into some giant corporation and leaves the area.
Yeah. I definitely want to see more pilots like that, where like a small village, everybody like in a village receives it, or like a substantial number of people within a certain community would receive it, so that you can measure more, like holistic macro effect. I mean, you
We
can't
might
really
find
do that.
out if Yang gets to become mayor,
Yeah. Maybe.
right?
Maybe after his first initial term, he could start doing smaller, like additional programs, or maybe even during his first term, after his initial promises are met, he could focus on certain neighborhoods and get some macroeconomic data.
Actually, I think the most hopeful data that we can get is Biden's children's tax cut.
Yeah.
It's starting in July. Faye, you, Kai, we're all gonna receive $300 a month per child.
Yeah.
I
So
hope so because I have never received Zephyr's second stimulus check. I got his first like months after I got mine. I don't know why because I don't remember like actually going to check on it or anything. It just suddenly appeared like months later. And now the second check is missing for Zephyr. So I just don't know how they deal with all of this and it's just so frustrating and to deal with the bureaucracy of it. Like I'm afraid once I open up that trying to contact IRS just feels so daunting. Seriously, like it's almost like if I don't need it, like right this second, it's going to make it's hard for me to really go search it. So hopefully when it does happen, it will happen for us too. But I'm constantly in the uncertainty if it will happen at all. If they know that Zephyr is my son and he lives here. It's very weird.
That is
Uh,
frustrating.
yeah.
Did you receive the $1,400 one, the most recent
I
one?
received that and I received it for him as well. So
Okay.
I'm confused. Like his second check is missing though.
Mm.
So I just don't know. Like they do well and then sometimes they don't do well. And I don't know why. There's no explanation of why things are happening. I
The
don't even
second
get
one
that
being,
letter. Some
yeah,
people get a letter that explains, what their stimulus check is. I haven't even gotten that. So
yeah. Yeah, there seems to be inconsistency. I don't know. I don't know what what determines those differences. But like my daughter, who was an adult dependent last year, so she didn't receive the stimulus last year. But this year, she got that back for some reason. Oh, because this year she claimed as dependent, I mean, as an independent. So she received payments from last year, even. I don't know how that happened.
filing her taxes, because when you file your taxes this year, that's actually
Mhm.
last year's taxes you're filing.
Right, that's right, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, and
Yeah.
she didn't have to do anything, it just came automatically.
Well, she had to file her taxes, which is
Right, of course.
that's a big barrier for some people.
That's
For
true.
me, it's a
You're
big
right.
barrier.
Yeah, 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 you're right.
So there's a lot of things that people who are good, who are just good, normal people, take
Yeah.
for granted in our society. And it turns out that it's not that way for many people in
Yeah.
our country. So like you might take for granted that you have a bank account, and of course everybody has a bank account. No, many people do not. Some people don't have a credit card. Some people don't have the ability to have a phone. Some people don't have their ID, like
Yep.
to the point where there's things that good people take for granted, that of course I have a driver's license, I can prove who I am, and homeless people don't. They simply don't have these things. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of what we talk about on this
Yeah.
podcast.
No, I couldn't agree more. The way I look at it is, though, that the government has actually exceeded my expectation. I didn't expect as much as they did. They have done. Of course, they can do more, but I really expected less from either Trump administration or especially Biden administration. So, like seeing a lot of my friends and myself also really, really fortunately being taken care of, and seeing that yet a lot of other people are not, definitely makes me happy in some ways and really aware that we have so much more to do. Um, it's still better than really being completely desperate, like a whole lot.
Right. So again, this particular pilot is great in that it does have researchers attached to it, and they're
Exactly.
trying to research certain effects. And based on the size of the pilot, which is not very big, they've decided that what they can research is what are the mental effects, the mental health effects of having this money, which is also a wonderful thing to have information about,
Well, I
even
mean,
though it's qualified, even though it's supplementary and all of those things. Go ahead,
well,
Yeah.
I
Mario.
mean,
Sorry.
even if you're like a super conservative work type, it showed that it increased employment in the Stockton one.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, because it's not about work, it's about fear. Because
Yeah.
if you know that you're searching for another job while you're working for an employer, they're going to be all up in your business, and they hold so much negotiating power that they don't deserve, especially these big corporations. So they're like, if we can just keep you afraid that you're going to lose everything, and think we can keep you where we want you. But if they can't like pull those fear strings of like, oh, if you try to leave us, or if you try to improve your life, and we're gonna like do all these things, like then people have more freedom. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. And also this pilot, even though it doesn't have, so what we're piloting over and over is really just the very simple move from traditional philanthropy or traditional welfare into giving people choice, giving people money money is a choice. It's freedom to choose what you're
Mhm.
going to do with it. It's not saying you have to spend it on money on a food program. You don't have to spend it on housing or a specific thing. You use it the way you want. You can buy a blanket if
Yeah,
that's what you
for,
need. You can
like the
buy a
philan-
school. Yeah, you can start a business with it. You can do so many things that traditionally we have not allowed people to make choices for
I'm
themselves. So
I'm
that's a good.
sorry. Yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
philanthropy is so condescending. It's so this is the responsibility of a government of by and for the people to take care of its citizens, not just some rich guy who thinks on a whim, I may help a person, I may not help a person. But here's what sickens me the most. Um all those companies that got government bailouts, and then they're saying like, "Oh, we're being philanthropic." Well, you got a handout from the government, and you're using a small portion of that handout from the government to be philanthropic. Stop being a hypocrite.
The language encodes some of our toxic narratives that just,
Mm-hmm.
it just calls it up, and without
Mm-hmm.
having to, just the language that you use, which word you choose,
Mm-hmm.
brings up, a whole set of connotations and thoughts and feelings about these people or that
Mm-hmm.
particular situation. And
Right.
definitely philanthropy has not been always beneficial for people. Sometimes the recipient of philanthropy, feels oppressed by it almost. And so
Mm-hmm.
this has been a real issue for states where welfare is being used the most. I was always surprised, like, why are they the ones who are most against traditional welfare systems? Well, they've had also the most contact with the welfare system, and therefore they know all the flaws and the problems that happen with it. And so in their attempt to sort of fix those failures, instead of fixing the failures, they just want to just throw it away because it's been so difficult to deal with. um, like some of these things that Kai was saying are guaranteed or whatever, they're not guaranteed that you could receive it in your time of need because of all the applications and the bureaucracy of it and trying to prove that you need it at that moment. It can be really, really daunting. So even for me, and I'm a Berkeley grad, right? I'm somebody who should be able to do paperwork, but somehow I
Like,
just like I can't deal with it when
here's the
it's
part that
so
bothers me.
yeah.
Like,
Hard, man.
yeah, 100%. Like you're a Berkeley grad, and what do we tell all of our kids? We want them to graduate from places like UCLA and Berkeley, and they'll be safe and secure and all of that stuff. But like then I heard that you're a Berkeley grad, and one time you were on food stamps. Like what the? I was
I'm
like,
still on
what?
food stamps right now. Ariel,
You're
I'm on
still
food
on
stamps
food
right now.
stamps. Right,
Yeah.
right, and you're still and that's like but what do they tell their kids? Like you graduate from university, and especially if it's a high prestigious one, you'll make $1 million more in your lifetime, and yet you, Faye, are on food stamps. So and it's
Well,
like, and if you
you
get a
could.
It's
master's
all a
degree, it's
lie.
You
It's
could.
because
You
a lot
could
of
be
that
Andrew
narrative is
Yang. You could
mm-hmm.
become Andrew Yang and like run for president if you happen to go to the right school, executor
Right.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. But
But
you also had
you can
a
also,
network.
yeah, you can also try to go home to a rural area. And what job would you get as a Berkeley grad in East Texas, in Palestine, Texas?
Right. Yeah.
What if you decide that you need to take a break and take care of your children? What if, all sorts of things can happen in your life that people don't think about. And so yeah, it's possible you'll take off and go in that direction, but then things happen. You could go off in a different direction. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I think a lot of people want to say, well, if you chose to go in that direction, then you get what you get, right? But is that the life we really wanted for our children? I mean, is this the life that we created? We wanted our children to, have these awful choices. Do we want them
Right.
to work two jobs to be more American so they can afford to start up their life? So
Yeah,
these,
that's
I think societal choices are what we're looking at. And these pilots are helping us to understand better why philanthropy and why welfare, has not been successful in achieving what we would like. We want people to be out of poverty. We don't want more people to fall in.
Yeah.
And the disparity is growing.
No. Yeah. I think that is another thing that I do really want to see in pilots or some other kind of. Oh, so here's one thing that I was told by one of the UBI long time UBI academics, is that she said that social changes don't happen because of pilots; they happen because of small implementations. So she said that she wanted to see more of like small scale actual implementations rather than like experiments. And that was a point that I hadn't really thought about until I heard that from her.
Well,
What
we
do you guys
have
think about
those.
that? Yeah, that's true.
We
Right?
have
We have
those.
Minkan,
We
we have
have
the
those.
Alaska, like all
We
kinds
have
of,
those in the tribes in the
Yeah,
Native
that's true.
American tribes
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
in our country. Yeah.
yeah. So I think
That's
that's
why
the
Andrew
next.
Yang used to say that this was a very American idea. That it was beyond, even though there had been precedents even before Americans came up with the idea, but it's a very American idea because it was something that you observe a lot in Native American tribes.
Mhm.
So hopefully this pilot will lead us to a real implementation starting in New York, because we're going to get Andrew up there as mayor too, and he's going to be wanting to implement something.
We'll
Are you
see.
keeping up with the mayoral race since you guys are in New York? I mean, you're not in the city, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I haven't been down to the city, since the beginning of the pandemic. I got my Johnson and Johnson 2 weeks ago, so I'm okay. I might like go down there and maybe do a little canvassing. But it seems like they really, they're like on a roll, and I think they have a lot of people helping. So I think,
I don't
it's
know
it's
if
different from the
Andrew,
presidential campaign.
if Andrew Yang loses this one, I just might believe in election rigging because
Yeah.
We don't need to.
I
I mean, it's like I said, we're
Oh.
seeing all of the slander, all the bad faith attacks on his character that I said we would, and they come from the
yeah,
Democratic establishment. The
right.
blue no matter who crowd, and it's a
But he's still
very
13.
very powerful thing. They don't
But he's
necessarily
still
need to rig
13.
the election to wrongfully beat him. So
But
we'll see.
he's still 13 points ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's just falling.
But
I mean that's why they called him Teflon Don, because every attack that they did on him didn't stick. But but with Yang, it's just like he's just so pure that people see like right through this crap. Like no one else has been like, I've never seen a politician that's always this happy, and it's like what the hell, what does it take to make Andrew Yang like mad, other than what happened to his wife?
Yeah.
I think, and that he's mostly sad about. Not even, except at one time where he said, "I really did want to kick that guy's ass," and that was it. This was a guy who like sexually abused his wife, and he just said that one thing, and that was it. Like, what does it take to get this guy angry? Like, he can't. you know.
there's
I
not a
think that's
lot of anger
like
in some people. Yeah, some people don't have a ton of anger. They don't see. I'll see a lot of use for it in their psychological profile, and they sort of move away from it and grow away from it. And other people, they're just raring to go anytime. So
yeah, that's
Do
true.
you guys feel invested in this Andrew Yang's campaign? Not just because we're Yang Gang or whatever, but
uh,
that his becoming a mayor of a large city like New York City could maybe move again the public perception of universal basic income, or do you
I don't-
think it's
I
not
I think
whether
yes.
he wins or not, it's doesn't really matter. What do you think?
I think that if he wins, it will have a positive effect on the universal basic income campaign, the world over. Yes,
Mhm.
but I am not yet emotionally recovered enough to invest in a political campaign. And also, I'm just so tired of. I can't invest in our system. I just have seen the electoral system fail too many times, and just not just give us an outcome that doesn't represent
But
the will
if
of the people.
but
So
but
I don't know.
if he does win this, like, will some of your emotions recover, or you just feel the same?
Sure, probably. Who knows? I don't know. I can't promise anything, but I imagine probably. But like, will he win it? I can't really feel like he's going to win it just because it seems at this time by all the standard metrics he will, because I feel like I've been being told at every political race I've ever been a party to for the past 10, 15 years, that there's like a few weeks before the election, the person who seems like they are the representation of the will of the populace is going to win by a landslide. And then then things change and the institutional candidates win. And this happens like every election. And we're just at that point in the cycle now where it seems like everything is going as it should be. And then we're going to have the fall.
But
That's America.
like that's what I felt like. I was so invested in David Kim's campaign.
Right. And that's how it is.
And like,
you know?
yeah. But
it seems like, well, this is the right man for the right job and everything's coming together. And how can he lose? And he does. It's like,
hang on. I do think because of the name ID, it's different this time. Like that, like all like his name ID is huge, and because of his presidential run, so that's what separates him from the rest of the pack. And it's usually done the other way around. You become mayor of New York and then you run for president. But he does running for president and then running for mayor of New York. That's like a big thing, Yeah. So that's that, and I hope he does
How
run
about
again.
you? That's great, Ariel, because there's a lot of really interesting things that could happen from Andrew Yang being in New York City, because he's somebody who is standing for change, of all kinds of change. So much more than the UBI, there will be a lot of different new policies that he could test out, and we'll be able to see the results of those tests in New York City.
But it's like I'm on the diagonal coast of New York, so that's
right.
like kind of disappointing in LA.
But you know that it will affect you even in Los Angeles, because if he tries out something, in New York City, it can migrate over to other places.
I hope. Yeah, I really hope that he has a good relationship with Eric Garcetti in that case. And I don't know, or whoever our next mayor of LA is going to be. I don't know. Eric Garcetti, it seems like he's been there forever. The last one was Villaraigosa. He kind of sucked.
Oh, I remember him. He's been around a long time. Yeah, that's
yeah. So Garcetti. So if him and Garcetti, after he becomes mayor, are friends, like I'd really like that. Or maybe I just hit up Garcetti and say like, hey, like be friends with Yang or something like that. I don't. Yeah.
That's how do you feel about this, Keiko? Because you're in New York State, so
Yeah.
that feels even closer.
Yeah. So I predicted that he would win from the very beginning in this mayoral race, just because of the nature of the mayoral race. I was there. I came into the city when Ed Koch was mayor, so this is a long time ago. So I've seen him, Dinkins, and Giuliani, and Bloomberg, and Yang just really fits in that winning portrait. I mean, name recognition is number one, and he had it. So, I thought this was, he would be the candidate to beat. But his campaign actually exceeded my expectation, because he, when he was running for president, he was definitely a national candidate. He was a man of big change, big picture. And it was hard for me to imagine him transform from that to New York City issues, because I knew that there would be a lot of small things that are like really opposite of these national issues. And sure enough, he talked about the scaffolding. Now he's talking about placards. These are like really everyday issues that are actually pretty important to New Yorkers. And I'm so pleasantly surprised to see that Andrew made that shift. Now he's like, this uncle next door who's taking care of your neighbors, kind of thing. That's what you have to do to be a mayoral candidate. Yeah, and he's doing a really great job, and I have to give it to his campaign team too. Even though I know there was a controversy there.
And not to mention, that all the time, like when he went on like news shows, they were all like, what about running for mayor of New York? Have you thought about running for mayor of New York? Like it used to actually annoy me. I'm like, no, he's running for president. And then the minute he drops out, we hear about mayor of New York.
Yeah,
What about
that's
mayor of
right.
New York? And it's like, oh, for God's sake. And now if they get like how could you run for mayor of New York? Like they tell him that, he could be like, well, I don't know, you guys told me that to do it 1,000
That's
times. You have question.
yeah, fair point, fair point.
How do you feel, Kai? Even though, you're not in New York, but, how do you feel? Does this still affect you, the Andrew Yang being able to become mayor or not becoming mayor?
I'm excited. I lived in New York for a while. I lived in Westchester County and went to an all-women's college that has since closed their doors. But it's a whole different animal. Folks that live in the 5 boroughs are very attached to being who they are as being members of the 5 boroughs, of being part of one of the largest cities in the world, one of the trendsetters for finance and fashion and news and just all of it, right? And so I like this idea that Andrew is going to elevate this message of small changes on the ground trickle up, right? That was one of his big campaign, perspectives, is that we need an economy that trickles up. And of all the places in the world to show how that works on a very practical perspective, like New York City is the place to do it. And he's the kind of person, he is obviously the man who can, with the right team behind him, make it be very successful.
Yeah, and I
So,
would actually say maybe this job could be it's as big as the presidency, honestly, because it's going to be so complex. It's very difficult, and there's so many details, like Keiko said. The federal government has a certain set of things that they're responsible for, and it's a lot of people. But New York City is a huge economy. It has its
right,
own. It has a lot of people in it also, and it's a very complex and very difficult job that a lot of people, will say your political, you know, sort of people think that they're going to maybe launch from there into a presidency or something else, but most of the people who become mayor do not, right? They don't actually launch from there anywhere else. The city, needs them so much. All of their energy has to go towards taking care of that. So I think it's a difficult job, but it's one that he really seems to relish. He seems to be really going at it with gusto. I mean, he has the same type of energy that he brought to the national campaign. I see him out there every day, despite the pandemic, despite challenges to his health recently, very small challenges, but still. So I think, and based on the fact that his family is with him, he doesn't have to travel the country and not have and be away from his children, be away from Evelyn so much. And I think that they're enjoying their togetherness in doing this together and having Evelyn be out there with him sometimes,
Yeah.
doing her own things. I think that's making a big difference for him in his personal life, and also, just he feels it seems like he feels very supported by the fact that we're still here with him. I wasn't sure about that for a minute. I was like, maybe they don't really want Yang Gang to show up anymore, since most of us are not in New York City, right? So what are New Yorkers going to think when the national Yang Gang shows up and says, "Hey, you guys need to do this," right?
Yeah.
They're not going to listen to us. They don't care,
Yeah.
what we think. But I think that having a game behind you gives you a sort of power. And so we're really happy to be able to just be there and just say, "Hey, we remember who you are. We know where you came from. We know all the history because Yang Gang's been following you for so long. And we understand you when you say something. It's when New York City people who are coming to this for the first time, but they haven't thought about, Andrew Yang too hard until, oh, now he's running for mayor, right? Some of them, they have misgivings because they don't know the things that we know. And so I want to encourage Yang to be positive and to, understand that if we don't live in New York City, we are not going to make decisions there, and we can't really affect anything, but we can in a positive manner provide information so that New Yorkers can make better choices. And our job is to basically, hi Carl, nice to see you.
Hey.
Our
Yeah,
guest
excellent.
TV,
Hey,
your
Carl.
environment Seattle host has joined us for a minute. Our good friend.
Yeah, Carl, I think I
Yeah,
said
thanks.
earlier to you 2 to 4, but it didn't occur to me to add East Coast time.
Well, no, that's I just wanted to pop in
Oops.
before the end, and
A little
Okay,
rattle.
good. I'm glad
Yeah,
there was
in the
that's
sound.
on me. Yeah, you got some digital distortion
Yeah,
on.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. then.
Overheating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
I recognize
So,
overheating with my audio engineer powers. Anyway.
the reason is we're going to have Carl back to talk with us again, and he might bring a friend. And so he thought he would maybe, let us know what he's doing right now. And we can do a little shout out before his next, when we meet with him soon.
I
So
scared him
anyway,
away. I was rude. I'm sorry.
no. I was going to let him know that his sound was rattling. So
Okay, good.
yeah, no. So my main thing is I wanted to remind everybody to be respectful. We don't want to turn into the Bernie Bros of 2022 or 2020 or whatever it is, 2021 we're in now. We don't want to make New Yorkers feel like we're trying to convince them or persuade them of something. They're going to make a decision for themselves, but they need to be provided with the information that we have because we've been following Andrew. We know his character. We know why he's doing things because we've, read the things, we've watched things from early on. So when we see something that's happening out there where, there's just a lot of misunderstandings. Well, where are you getting your news from? Have you had a chance to actually meet Andrew in the streets because he's out there every day pounding the pavement? Have you had a chance to read this or hear about, something from, that understand the history of how things developed this way? Did you know that he's a certain height? He's very tall and people don't know this. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Did you know? As long as he's tall, then yes, I will vote for him. Thank you. Yes.
But what I mean is like there's a natural,
No, I know you're right. It's ludicrous, but it actually is. It makes a huge difference.
Well, when you meet him in person and you realize that he's nothing like what you've been hearing about, maybe from your, whatever group you came from, if, you might start questioning some of the narratives that are out there about him. So that's what I'm hoping that we can do is just show up and just provide that information, but without judgment and without like being pushy. So
Right. Yeah. No, we definitely don't want to like say that, oh, he lost, the presidential, so he deserves this position. He doesn't deserve
no.
the position.
Yeah.
It's just that he earned the position. He's
the man he's the person the city needs.
He's the person
that's
that
the
they need,
most
right.
important thing. It doesn't matter. Deservedness is secondary to
right.
to thriving, to success and survival.
Right. This is not a consolation prize for him. Basically, this is just something that he wants, and I hope that he does run again in 2024, but he like grooms somebody to be the next mayor, and then he jumps out of it.
It's gonna be Zach.
That would not happen. That should not happen.
That should not happen. No. That was the joke.
New Yorkers might not enjoy that.
No.
But, I mean, we have to retool our minds to understand what New Yorkers really want and what are they asking for? What are they thinking about? And I know that that's what Andrew is doing. We all see him doing it. So there was one challenge, for example, that just happened on Twitter, and I thought I could very quickly address it. Is that somebody was saying that the people who are now running his campaign have also been lobbyists in the past, I think, or maybe are continuing to be lobbyists at the same time, simultaneously. And so they're concerned are they going to have undue influence over Andrew Yang? But I want to tell people this, is that if you see Andrew Yang, he will tell you the same thing he told you in 2016. He has not, like you can see his development by just going back, and he's done so many interviews. He allowed anybody who wanted to interview him, except for maybe us. Wait a minute. But like he showed up.
I would feel like I'd have to first explain just using the name. No.
Not only that, you can look back in his history. He already wrote it all down in a book, right? He had books that published, but he has a website now. So every single policy that he thinks of is on a website, and you can hold him accountable to those things. So regardless of whatever you think lobbyists might be influencing or whatever, let's just take a look at the facts. Other politicians don't put their policies out. They don't put a white paper of every single thing they're planning on doing and why.
They should.
But Andrew Yang does that. It's on the website. Yeah. So you will not, what you see is what you get with Andrew Yang. So that's what I'm going to say.
Biden has all of his policies on his website.
Did he? Did Biden do that?
I think so.
So that's excellent. We're going to hold him to it.
Did he really?
If it's something that we want to happen.
Was one of them like no more malarkey, Jack? And was the next one I mean it?
Yeah, I have to check it out myself.
Right. That's the introduction. The formal
Carl
introduction.
Is back for a minute.
Anyway, Zach, thank you for joining us. You sound crystal clear and beautiful, and everything is well.
So, we're going to have Carl back with us and have him as a special guest again on the 23rd, which is next Friday. And so we just want to, Carl, you wanted to let us know what you've been doing lately. And are you going to bring your friend on the 23rd?
I really hope so. So that is this bat time and this bat channel. Is that right? And that'll work out great for me. And I think it'll also work out for my friend Nick Turan, who makes a website called whatisnuclear.com. And that's his primary speaking engagement, because he is a nuclear energy educator. What I'm going to say, and he's not, because he can't represent his employer, is that Nick does some wonderful, amazing things in advanced nuclear research. And so he is helping to make the natrium reactor. And you can go look up that technology and you'll find that he can't necessarily represent his employer, but I love to talk it up. I think that we're doing wonderful things with the Advanced Test Reactor project that's been approved for the state of Washington, and the XE100 reactor from X Energy that they just signed the contract on. So we have some of these fourth generation reactor technology. This is the yanggang position. We're going to have some new fluid reactors, some new, fast flux reactors for breeder technology. And I'm super excited to see that come to Washington State. And so I wanted to just give you folks the lowdown on what I'm super excited about. I have been a little lax in streaming personally lately, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes here.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah. Thank you.
We're very punk rock about our channel and what we do here. We bring on all kinds of different people, and we are cognizant that many people living in poverty really don't have the kind of resources to have the best sound or to have video or whatever it is that they're missing. They may not have a phone to work with, so we just bring everybody on, and we try to make it very easy and relaxed here. But you really put a lot into your productions, and you plan things out ahead of time. And I love that.
Thanks.
Right?
Yeah, I've been working basically in video games for a while, and I got into streaming because I saw it was such a big thing, around 2012, 2013. All that was just starting to get going, and now it's really hit hard for me personally, because politics has finally come to Twitch, and there's so much energy around politics on Twitch, and I'm really glad that you're here. You sort of led the way, I think, in terms of having a regular Twitch politics show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've
That's
never
high
actually
praise.
seen a I always thought of Twitch as just for
Maybe
gamers
we should go
until we
back to
started doing
Twitch.
this.
You know, like 2 weeks ago, I was like, YouTube is just a pile of suck. I'm gonna just focus on Twitch more. And I forgot how to correctly log in, so I went back here. That's
Do both.
I know, I
Well,
Do
yeah,
know.
both
we're
every
doing
time you
both
can.
today.
I
We're
just
doing
gotta
both today. In fact, we had
two-step
several people
verification
drop
code.
by. Yeah, we had several people drop by and start chatting in there,
I
but
had to
nothing
text
that I
Faye.
felt.
I was like,
Yeah.
who has the phone for our two-step verification code? See, that's the downside of being so punk rock.
Well, anyway, let's say I wanted to hear one last thought from Keiko so that we can start to do our sign-offs now because we're at the end of our scheduled time together, and it's hard for Zephyr to wait for me a long time. So selfishly, I have to kind of get going. Keiko, how can people continue having conversations with you and learn about all of your projects if they are close enough to you that they can participate?
Yeah, so I am kind of at a point where I have to make a decision as to whether I should like forge ahead or should step back because the reality is that I have a family, I have a home, and now my 84-year-old mother is gonna move in with me next year or within a year or two. All of these things, life decisions. So I am following a couple of leads to see if I can get some grants or some funding for what I'm doing. If I can do that, then I will continue. If not, I will, just kind of step back from any kind of organizational effort. And, I'll still be a volunteer with income movement and whatnot. But so we'll see. But Forge Art Collective .org is my website, and there's a way to sign up for my newsletter. So that's one way to keep up. I also have a Facebook group called Ulster County Universal Basic Income Facebook group. So you can be connected that way as well. And Twitter, Keiko Sono.
Could you please repeat the name of your collective that you cut out there for a second?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. ForgeArtCollective.org.
Forge Art Collective. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not your fault at all. It's just technological stuff.
And also, we have some people who only listen to the podcast and do not show up to live streams. So, would you mind sort of spelling your Twitter handle that you just shared with us?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So it's Keiko. What do you call it? The underline?
Underscore.
Yeah. SONO.
All right, and you can continue having conversations with our guest in that way and learn more about what she decides to do and how she's going to proceed in the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
we
you're
really
welcome
appreciate you
anytime.
coming.
We really appreciate it every time.
Yeah, if you feel like we didn't get to talk about some of the things that you would have liked to talk about, because we somehow, just sometimes the conversation meanders, feel free to come back again. We have a schedule that we put up every Thursday, and if you see somebody else that you would like to talk to, feel free to drop in anytime.
Sounds
We're
great.
here.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Ariel, do you want to do your closing before we go?
Yeah, for sure. You can find me at Ariel's Ariels, and it's official now since I have my certificate. So that's ArielsaErials on Twitter and youtube.com/revolutionary thinking. Yeah.
All right. Kai, how about you?
Thanks so much for coming, Keiko. It's great to see you.
Likewise.
And I'm glad that we are connected in the way that we are. So thank you so much for coming on today. I am Kai Zen, KC. I hail from Kansas City, Missouri, but I now live in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a UBI advocate, and I can be found on Twitter at KAIZENKC. I'm also on Cash App, Patreon, PayPal. So you can find me. I'm out there.
with the same Kaizen KC for all of those. That's really awesome that you were able to do that. Sometimes it gets a little complicated trying to track people with all different names.
Yeah,
Kai,
yeah,
thank you so much for inviting Keiko and for doing the scheduling because that is a difficult job. Sometimes we forget that it takes a little coordination.
it sure
I'm so
does.
glad that Carl has been allowing me to message back and forth with him so that we could get him and his friend on next week. Carl, what are you doing these days that you would like people to know about so they can come learn about you and anticipate our programs?
Yeah. So this might be too soon of notice for the podcast, so apologies, but I do have an event tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and you can find that at the Seattle Clean Energy Meetup on meetup.com or on Facebook if you look for Seattle Eco Modernist Society, Seattle Friends of Fission. This is called it's going to be an open discussion on the Bill Gates book, How to Avert a Climate Crisis. So, again, that is Saturday, April 17th, 11 a.m. Pacific time. The rest of my media is I'm Carl Alex Pauls, Carl with a K on Twitter. And you can find all of my media at yestv.org.
Awesome. Okay, so I will try to uh, come by and stop by because tomorrow we are not doing a regular stream at that time. We're going to have a little social event in the evening just for Yang Gang. So, Shale, do you want to tell people about that?
Oh yeah, we have a social hangout 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern in this Discord. Anyone's welcome to come. It's a Yang Gang kind of thing, but just anybody who wants to come. It's not going to be streamed. I don't have a particular plan for it. I'll pop in and out. I expect people to pop in and out. I don't expect everyone to stay for the whole time, but if you'd like to, you can. You can stream a video game, or you can watch other people stream whatever, or just talk to people on camera, just hang out. So yeah, I'll be tomorrow 7 to 10 on this Discord, and feel free to bring a friend if you're going to come. And yeah.
Okay. So my name is Fei Ku, and Shale and I are doing a special project that's very personal to me. It's a letter writing project and also an audio program project um, where I basically read the letters that I wrote back and forth to my children while I was incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles, which is a federal facility for federal inmates. You can learn more about our project. It's going to be on OpenSea. And how should we,
It's
if
there
you go on
already.
OpenSea,
Yeah.
okay, you go on OpenSea.com, is that right?
You
And then
go.
you just search letters from jail.
You can go
Is that
directly.
right?
You can go to OpenSea.io and search letters from jail, or you can just go
Oh,
to
it's not .com.
yes,
.io.
.io,
.io.
OpenSea.io, or you can just go directly to OpenSea.io/letters from jail, and it is an NFT-based, blockchain-based audio journalism, documentation, and activism project. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud to be able to do this citizen journalism, citizen documentation, citizen media activism work that is possible through the leverage granted me by new technologies that I'm taking advantage of. And I'm happy to be able to do it and do all the good I can with it. And this is a very exciting project for me, very gratifying project. And please check it out. It's OpenSea.io/letters from jail, and it's
We're trying to do these little 30-minute programs, which are hard for us because we're used to such long formats. but we do the 30. We're trying to keep them short so that because it's a lot of heavy topic, as Shale has mentioned, and you don't have to buy the item in the store in order to listen. So if you want to, just click on our photo, the photo of me and the boys, and the audio program will start playing, and you can, get into the episodes. We're going to be recording about one a week, something like that. It just follows, the story of our family as I was incarcerated. So
yeah, it's presented as a sort of virtual art gallery on the blockchain, which is a new way. It's something I was gonna Keiko. I could certainly help you set up an OpenSea NFT storefront if you'd be interested. I was going to suggest that because it is a potential way to make money as a painter,
amazing.
as a visual artist. Yeah, I'll help you after we get off the
Great.
stream. But
Yeah, like
yeah,
NFTs, I think most people think of NFTs as something kind of maybe like kind of a little first of all, they're going to think of it as maybe a visual art, and then might think of it as being something that's for billionaire playboys or something, or they think about it as there's a lot of
it's
things that
not that.
people might
Yeah.
put on it. Maybe they think of it as something silly. People are selling silly things on there that are fun. But we're doing a really serious project. And so once again, we're pioneering a space that nobody else has jumped into.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Sounds amazing. I'll definitely check it out.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We also recorded something with Kai. I remember, Shale, you recorded something with Kai on that.
I also did an NFT with Kai. It's sort of a prototype to what we're doing. And I do plan on doing others, audio interview series, and perhaps more with Kai if she's interested in the future. I think there's a lot of good stuff to do in this space, and I think this new monetization method is viable and interesting. And I think you can treat anything like a painting in a gallery. People can go look at it and enjoy it, and collectors can make an offer and they can take it, and then it's not in the gallery anymore. And people, if they want to experience it, they have to find them. They can view it or buy it themselves. But the painter could also always sell a print and just have a limited number of prints. So this is more like that. I could make another print, but when someone buys it from the store, maybe I have an audience in a year and someone's like, hey, where's episode 17? Like, oh, episode 17 was sold. I'm going to keep it absent for 2 weeks so people, understand the format, what the NFT format is and the significance of it. And, for 2 weeks, you have to go find that person if you want it, because that file's theirs, not mine anymore. So it's interesting, in a sort of medium is the message kind of sense. Anyway, I'm just going on and on about it.
Well, I'm going to toss my 2 cents in and say, what I love about it is that it's very collaborative.
Yeah.
And so I view it as a process of, community giving artists their a broader basis for expression and a broader weight to be appreciated for what they're able to produce. So, I think it's using technology to a higher good ultimately.
Yeah,
Well, we don't know where it's going to go, but we know that where it's been so far, and it's been really interesting. So we want to support the blockchains, and we are also supporting ourselves. This is a very personal project for me because I haven't had a letter from my children since 2017, June of 2017. That's several Mother's Days that have gone, and we each have a birthday every year. And we each have, them through the pandemic. And so all of this time, I haven't had any news of them other than a very, very short, very small, communication from a mutual friend. So I think it's been too long, and I would like to make a change in this situation now. And I hope that this project can do that for me. I'm going to ask people who are good friends and safe adults to write letters to my children ahead of, May is my birthday again, and also Mother's Day. And so hopefully we can make a small change in this situation just so that they can write back to me. And I'm really, really thankful to know Shale and everybody here and have your support. Okay. So you can find me on Twitter at Palestine Math. I live in Palestine, Texas. PalestineMath for Make America Think Harder. And you can find me on Facebook as myself, Fayku, Fayeku. Thank you very much. Shale, I think that's it. That's all of us.
Thank you, Faye. My Twitter is my name, which is Shale Riley, ShaelRiley. I will be back next week with more basic income advocacy. So thank you, everyone. Goodbye.